The Altamaha lives in several of the small streams and channels of the river in its nearby marshes, especially around Darien, Butler Island, and McIntosh County. This cryptid is described as having a body like a sturgeon with a bony ridge on its top. It has front flippers and no back limbs. It swims much like a dolphin and has the snout of a crocodile with large jutting eyes and large sharp teeth. Its coloring is said to be gray or green with a white or yellow underbelly. Reports indicate that the beast is roughly 20 to 30 feet long, though some have reported both smaller and larger creatures, suggesting that Altamaha is not alone. It has been seen sunbathing on the shore, trolling casually along the river, and has even reacted defensively around boats. Though no physical evidence of the Altamaha has been found, the stories go back for centuries, with the natives describing a giant water snake that hissed and bellowed. One of the first non-native reports of the creature was on April 18, 1830, when a correspondent of the Savannah, Georgia newspaper reported multiple sightings of a sea monster on the Georgia coast. The primary eyewitness was Captain Delano of the schooner Eagle, who saw a large creature off of St. Simon's Island below the mouth of the Altamaha River. The captain said that it was about 70 feet long, its circumference about the size of a barrel, and its head looked like an alligator's head. 5 other men on the schooner also saw the beast, along with several planters on St. Simon's Island. In the 1920s, foresters riding along the river saw a large serpentine water monster. In 1935, a group of hunters spotted what they called a giant snake swimming through the river. In the 1940s, Boy Scouts saw the creature, as well as 2 officials from the Reedsville State Prison from the 1950s. In 1969, when 2 brothers were fishing on the Altamaha River at Clark's Bluff, they reported seeing an animal that they first thought was a sturgeon, but quickly changed their mind when they got a better look, stating that it measured about 10 to 12 feet long, with a snout like an alligator and a horizontal tail. They also described the creature as having a triangular ridge along the top of its body, sharp pointed teeth, and being gunmetal gray in color. In the summer of 1980, 2 men spotted Altamaha beached on a mud bank near Cathead Creek. They stated that the animal was lying halfway in the water, thrashing and trying to free itself from the bank. They described it as being dark-colored with rough skin and about 20 feet long. While watching, the creature freed itself, submerged, and disappeared. Later that year, in December 1980, another man reported having seen what he thought was Altamaha in Smith Lake. His description said the animal was 15 to 20 feet long, snake-like with 2 brown humps sticking out from the water, and left behind a wake like a speedboat would. Another report in the 1980s from a crab fisherman stated the creature looked like the world's biggest eel. A report in 2002 by a man pulling a boat up the river near Brunswick, who saw something over 20 feet in length and 6 feet wide break the water. Sightings of the Altamaha continue to this day.
The Bear Lake Monster is a cryptid living in Bear Lake on the Utah-Idaho border. The natives say there is a monster that lives in the lake that has captured and carried away people swimming in the lake, but they say it has not been seen for many years, not since the buffalo inhabited the valley. They present it as a serpent, but having legs about 18 inches long, on which they sometimes crawl out of the water a short distance on the shore. They also say it spits water upwards out of its mouth. Since the settlement of the valley, several people have seen a huge animal of some kind that they could not describe, but such people have generally been alone when they saw it. In July of 1868, Mr. S.M. Johnson, who lives in the east side of the lake at a place called South Eden, was going to the Round Valley settlement, 6 miles to the south of this place, and when about halfway, he saw something in the lake, which at the time he thought to be a drowned person. The road being some distance from the water's edge, he rode to the bench, and as the waves were running pretty high, he thought it would soon wash onto shore. In a few minutes, 2 or 3 feet of some kind of animal that he had never seen before were raised out of the water. The description of the monster was the following: a creature with a brown body, somewhat bigger in circumference than a man, anywhere from 40 to 200 feet long. Its head was shaped like a walrus without tusks or like an alligator, and the eyes were very large and about a foot apart. It had ears like bunches, about the size of a pint cup. It had an unknown number of legs, approximately 18 inches long, and it was awkward on land, but swam with a serpentine motion at a speed of at least 60 miles an hour. No one ever described the back part of the animal, since the head and forepart was all that was ever seen.
Gaja Mina is a sea cryptid commonly seen in Indonesia. Its body is said to be a combination of elephant and fish. The creature is widely known by sailing Malay and Indonesian people. The name Gaja Mina literally means fish elephant. Descriptions of Gaja Mina come from coastal village elders. The elders say that the creature is as large as a whale, has a trunk like an elephant, fur over its body, a pair of tusks, and in some cases wide ears. Many fishermen attribute Gaja Mina with bad luck. On January 13, 2005, a strange, furry white carcass was found on Dungun Beach. The carcass was found by nearby villagers who took pieces of it. The length of the body was 12.5 meters. Its tusks were 3 meters, and its skin was 10 centimeters thick. On June 20, 2010, a sea elephant was seen by a fisherman. While diving to check his day's catch, the creature became trapped in his nets. Too afraid to get closer to the huge creature, the fisherman chose to leave the net and avoid the location for some time. He returned 3 months later, and only skeletal remains were found. On Valentine's Day of 2016, on an island called Natuna, a villager saw a 6-meter-long thing on Sisi Beach. At first he thought it was a whale. As he got closer, he saw what looked like a whale with tusks and a trunk. Many villagers came to see and helped drag it to the land. They then buried the corpse for the sake of cleanliness.
Bessie has been spotted in lakes from Canada to Pennsylvania. The first recorded sighting of Bessie was recorded in 1793, and more sightings have occurred with greater frequency in the last 3 decades. Bessie is said to be snake-like and 30 to 40 feet long, at least 1 foot in diameter, and a grayish color. While duck hunting north of Sandusky, Ohio in 1793, the captain of the sailboat, Felicity, spotted a large snake-necked creature described as more than a rod or 16.5 feet in length. In July 1817, the crew of a schooner reported a 30 to 40 foot long dark serpent. Later that year, another crew saw a similar creature, this time copper-colored and 60 feet in length. They shot at it with muskets, which seemed to have little to no effect. A third 1817 incident took place near Toledo when 2 French settlers encountered a massive beast on the beach, seemingly dying. The settlers described it as between 20 and 30 feet long and shaped like a giant sturgeon with arms. They fled the scene, and when they returned, the creature had disappeared, presumably carried off by waves. All that was left were marks on the beach and a number of steely scales about the size of silver dollars. An extraordinary sighting was reported by the entire crew of a ship sailing from Buffalo, New York to Toledo, Ohio, in July 1892. The captain and crew saw a large area of water approximately 1/2 mile ahead of them, bubbling up and foaming. As they approached, they saw a huge sea serpent that appeared to be wrestling about in the waters, as if fighting with an unseen foe. They watched as the monster relaxed itself and stretched out full-length 50 feet with its head sticking up above the water, an additional 4 feet. The brownish creature's eyes were described as viciously sparkling, and large fins were also noticed. Crystal Beach near Fort Erie was the scene of another sighting on May 5, 1896. 4 eyewitnesses watched for 45 minutes as a 30-foot creature with a dog-shaped head and pointy tail churned up the water as it thrashed about until finally disappearing before sundown. A reward of $100,000 was offered by Huron Lagoons Marina for the capture of Bessie, dead or alive. In 1960, Ken Golick was fishing off a pier in Sandusky when he heard some rats. He threw rocks at the vermin and then saw a large creature rise from the water. He says that the creature was cigar-shaped, measured 1 to 2 feet wide, and it pushed itself out of the lake with 4 flippers, then rested on a nearby beach. This occurred at 11 in the morning. Tony Schull of Akron, Ohio, saw a giant serpent when he was boating. It was dark brown and had a long, flat tail. Tony stated that 5 humps came out of the water and that there was no way it was a sturgeon. A friend was also boating with Tony, and he came face to face with the creature and said it had 5 humps and was black-colored. Later that year, Dale Monroe spotted a sea serpent from Lorain Coast Guard Station. He said it was visible for 4 minutes and estimated it to be twice the size of his 16-foot sailboat. In 1990, Bob Sirocco was jet skiing in Lake Erie when he saw what he thought was a porpoise or whale in the lake. However, porpoises and whales can't live in fresh water. Bob said that he recognized an aquatic air breather when he saw one, and that the creature had humps and gray spots. It was very long. He stated, another sighting that occurred during that year was when they said it was 35 feet long and had a snake-like head.
Elero is an extremely dangerous South American lake monster, having a hairless body that has the appearance of a cowhide which has been splayed out to dry. Elero means the hide or leather. The beast most closely resembles primitive stingrays. It has wide pectoral fins and a long whip-like tail with no barb. Its eyes are on stalks and its mouth is apparently expendable. Witnesses have also reported seeing a series of razor-sharp claws along the edges of Elero, which it uses to secure its prey. There have also been suggestions that Elero uses hunting knives taken from previous victims as weapons. The size of Elero ranges from 2 to 5 feet across and weighing around 65 pounds. Elero may be a distant relative of freshwater stingrays, which inhabit South America, as there are a few notable differences between the two. Natives say that Elero is a vicious predator, giving it the nickname Aquatic tiger. The monster surges out of the lake like a crocodile and overwhelms its prey. It then uses its proboscis to puncture the skin and suck out internal organs and blood. One story tells of a woman washing clothes by the lakeside as her baby slept nearby. According to her, the creature burst from the water like a crocodile and engulfed the baby. It then slipped into the water as quickly as it appeared. Similar creatures have been reported to live in the rivers and lagoons of both Argentina and Chile, and the legend of Elero has circulated throughout the indigenous populations of these two nations.
Cressy is a mysterious, eel-like cryptid who lurks in the depths of Crescent Lake in Newfoundland. Cressy first appeared in ancient Native American legends, in which it was called pond devil or swimming demon. It was feared by the lakeside locals, but reports of it by settlers only began in the early 20th century. In the 1950s, 2 men saw what they thought was an upturned boat heading upwind. On approach, it flipped itself around and swam below the lake. In the 80s, a pilot crashed and drowned in Crescent Lake, and while 2 scuba divers were retrieving the body, they were attacked by a school of unusual large eels and were forced to retreat. During the summer of 2003, several town residents say they saw the creature swimming after at least a year with no reports, which had led some residents to speculate whether Cressy had died. In these reports, Cressy was said to resemble a snake-like creature with a fish-like head. A passenger in a passing car shrieked at the driver as she looked out towards the lake and watched as the monster surfaced, its skin shiny and slick under the summer sun. Both watched water pour from the monster's gaping mouth. It was about 20 feet in length and swam silently across the top of the lake before diving down into the cool depths once more. There are other reports that divers from the Royal Canadian Mounted Police have allegedly described seeing giant eels as thick as a man's thigh in the lake while investigating a drowning death. In the winter, large holes often appear in the ice that covers Crescent Lake, leading some to speculate that the holes were created not by something falling into the lake, but by something bursting through the ice.
Champ is the legendary lake monster living in Lake Champlain along the border of the United States and Canada. There have been over 300 reported sightings of the Lake Champlain monster. Some have speculated that it is possible such a creature does live deep in the lake and is possibly related to an extinct group of aquatic reptiles. The first sightings of Champ are sometimes credited to French colonizer Samuel de Champlain, whose writings describe fish of up to 10 feet long with sharp, dangerous teeth. Native Americans living along Lake Champlain told stories of a mysterious horned serpent that was said to reside in the lake. On Saturday, July 24, 1819, Captain Crum was aboard a scow on Bulwagga Bay when he reported a black monster about 187 feet long and with a head resembling a seahorse that reared more than 15 feet out of the water. He claimed the monster he saw had 3 teeth, eyes the color of a peeled onion, a white star on its forehead, and a belt of red around the neck. 1873 was a busy year for Champ. A New York Times story reported that a railroad crew had seen the head of an enormous serpent in Lake Champlain, with bright silvery scales that glistened in the sun. In July that same year, Clinton County Sheriff Nathan H. Mooney reported an enormous snake or water serpent he thought was 25 to 35 feet long. Then in August, the steamship WB Eddie encountered Champ by running into it. The ship nearly turned over, according to the tourists on board. Never one to miss a trick, showman P.T. Barnum offered a reward of $50,000 in 1873 for hide of the great Champlain serpent to add to my Mammoth World's Fair show. By 1992, sightings totaled 180, with approximately 600 people claiming to have seen Champ all over the lake. The village of Port Henry, New York, has erected a giant model of Champ and holds Champ Day on the first Saturday of every August. Champ is sometimes referred to as America's Loch Ness Monster, but its legend actually predates that of Nessie.